crummy home situation. And she's in her last year of high school, and she's finally thinking, oh, I'm going to get out of this situation finally, like barely allowing herself to hope that that's really going to happen. And then the pandemic happens, and my heart really went out to all those kids and teens stuck in crummy home situations during the lockdown. So this one's for them. And we know from even about 2 or 3 months after the first lockdown started, Kids Help Phone had reported something like a 350% increase in service demand. So we know kids were really struggling with the isolation and fear. I remember feeling, even myself, it was very scary. The future was suddenly this big, uncertain blur. So I was thinking, imagine how kids and teens must feel about that. And personally, I didn't start to get rid of that really fearful feeling until I started hearing about vaccines and so on. So that took quite a while. And even later in the pandemic, what kids and teens and all of us were struggling with was all the grief and loss that then came. So kids lost so much, school, friends, support systems if they didn't have it at home. So I hope that this book will help teens feel that they weren't alone in feeling all those things. And also that makes it all sound terribly serious, but as you know, my books are always a little bit funny and the voice is funny, so I hope there's a lot of humor to kind of leaven the really heavy parts as well. So I hope it's a good read. I worked really, really hard on it. It's become a kind of book of my heart. So I hope, thank you for helping me help people discover it. The word will get spread about it, and people will be able to use it to sort of process their experiences.
Yeah, so it looks like the audio is working now.
Oh,
so
good.
This is good. So I'm just going to give you your introduction again, so you get to hear a whole bunch of nice things again. So just in case the audio didn't work before, this is author Bev Katz Rosenbaum, who is joining us for our first interview with a storyteller at Richmond Public Library. This is our Twitch stream, so everybody welcome. My name is James McCann. I am also an author. I've written 6 books, mostly for teens. I just started writing for middle grade. My latest book was 3 Spartans. I knew Bev Katz Rosenbaum way back when MySpace was a thing, which was pre-Facebook. And again, just in case you didn't hear it the first time, I was introduced to Bev Katz Rosenbaum through her book, I Was a Teenage Popsicle, which I absolutely adored and loved. And because I was working at a bookstore at the time, I recommended it to everybody because I wanted everybody to read it. And I was looking at your website. I believe now you can you're allowing people to download that one for free, right?
Yes, on my website I have my first 3 books available as PDFs to download for free. I got the rights back to those books and decided not to self-publish them, just to throw them up on my website as a treat for my readers. And
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I had a couple books go out of print as well, so I decided to do sort of the Arthur Slade thing, where Arthur Slade has been really amazing at self-publishing his out-of-print books. I tried it as well with a couple of my out-of-prints. Personally, I don't enjoy it. It's a lot of work, and it takes away from your writing time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and speaking of writing time, how do you balance because you're still editing. You edited a lot of my friends' books. I see their letters. I see how much they love your editing. So how do you balance the two?
I do love developmental editing as much as I love writing, and to me, I think helping other people with their stories also helps me as a writer. I do have a significant amount of flexibility, though, which is great because I'm not an in-house editor. It was much harder when I was working in-house as an editor. So now I can say, for example, this week I'm working out, I want to finish revisions on my work in progress, but I know I have a manuscript coming in from someone to edit. So I have like one day more of work on my manuscript, so I'm just saying, okay, I'm going to use that day to finish up the revisions on that manuscript. I can start this other person's book on Tuesday and work on that. So it's nice to have that flexibility. as well as opposed to having a secure day job. In some days I'm like, oh, I would really like more security and predictability. And that's the freelance life. You give up some things, but you gain so much. So
It's risk versus reward, right?
exactly, yeah. And I don't think I'm all that prolific. I think we've written about the same number of novels, and we started around the same time, as you said. Yeah. So, I mean, I look at other people like Arthur, for example, who's published. I can't even. Do you even know how many books?
Oh, I don't know. Or Eric, like Eric Walters.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh, well, that's a whole other level.
Yeah.
That's like superhuman or something.
But isn't it important, do you think, that when you're a writer to always acknowledge that it's not a competition?
Yes, I have to always remind myself of that, and also, yeah, I'm slower. I think because I'm not like someone who wants to write just for the sake of writing. The books that I write are the things that, I mean, this was not so much at the beginning of my career. I was a teenage popsicle days, and with those books, we were all just trying to get on that Harry Potter bandwagon and figure out kind of what's the next big thing, what's the next big gimmick. So for me, that's how I thought if I was a teenage popsicle. I thought, oh, a cryonically preserved teen, people will love that, and I'll be able to write a series, I bet. So, and that happened. It didn't do so well because then there was, of course, this huge glut of my literature. So then I took a long break, and I thought, I'd rather just work on books that really, really pull at me, ideas that really, really pull at me. So I talked about Who Was Tanksy a lot when it came out, and just it was a response to the 2016 US election, and I felt like I wanted to write a book about a school election with the themes of, putting, like, how do we really want to treat people and voting wisely. And with this book, it's interesting because with I'm Good and Other Lies, at the beginning of the pandemic, I actually had a draft of my main character's story already. It was just a book about this kid in this crummy home situation. But the story needed something to hang on. It didn't have anything to hang on. And then the pandemic came along, and as I said, my heart went out to all those kids stuck in those situations during the lockdowns. And I thought, oh, that's it. That's the thing I can hang my story on. And it was a really meaningful story to me already, and then it just became even more meaningful because of everything everyone went through. So,
Something that you just mentioned, actually, the Who's Tanksy. So I teach a class, a creative writing class, outside the library on Friday nights, and last term my students read your book.
Yes, you said.
Yeah, and they loved it. They really enjoyed it. And what I found was it was a really great way for opening up topics.
Yes.
So reading that one, we were able to to talk about current political events and the last U.S. election.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I really found it really helpful, and it's one of Orca books. And it's one of Orca books like high-low readers too.
Yes.
So which just means that the content is still high. It's just that it's written in an accessible format for students who are either struggling or don't necessarily like to read, because it gives them something that they can get into, which I think we're forgetting as a society, that not every kid wants to read the giant Harry Potter books that are this thick.
Exactly. Yeah. And as a young kid, I liked the fast reads. Big thick reads, and I'm still a very spirit kind of writer. So I'm
Do you have a favorite book?
That, even when I'm not writing books for striving readers, I'm very aware of keeping the reader's interest. So even with this book.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite book that you read as a kid and still love as an adult? Or?
Oh my gosh, favorite books I read as a kid. Well, it's kind of a cliche, but I remember the impact that the Anna Abel's books had on me. My very cool aunt bought them for me as a gift, the first 3 books in a box set, and I remember them just blowing my mind. So very Canadian.
Yeah. Have you been to Anne of Green Gables at all?
I have.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah. How is that? Because I've always heard about it, but I've never been to the East Coast.
Yeah, it was really cool. Going into the house, I didn't see the play though, which was why I was visiting. My sister married a guy from the East, and I was with them and insisted that Green Gables be the first thing we see in the house. Yeah, it was super fun.
As a writer, what do you do for I always one thing I always talk to my students about is the writing well, where when you can't think of anything, you have to go and do something to fill up your well. What do you do to fill up your writing well?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question, and it's so relevant because I've been telling people. I mean, this book that I'm working on now, my work in progress, is something a magazine article kind of jump-started the idea a few years ago, and it's been sort of gelling ever since. And as soon as I finished I'm Good in Other Lies, I started writing this other book. But I've been telling people, I don't know when I'm going to write after that, and I'm always kind of worried that I'm out of ideas. I don't know, do you ever feel that way?
All the time.
I do feel it, and I feel it very much now, and so I'm hoping that always something comes along. I just trust in that process.
Yeah.
And as I said, I'm forcing myself to not put too much pressure on myself about, when I sell the next book, when I get the next book done. I'd rather wait until an idea that's really meaningful, that I feel I really have to write, that I'm really excited about writing, comes along. And I just have to trust that will happen, which is hard. And when it does, take advantage of that feeling and get right to it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of liken your last couple of books, and maybe this is where you're heading in the future to the old Degrassi Junior High series.
Yeah.
You're writing these teen fiction stories that actually have to do with our society, but also have real teens in it.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? I mean, obviously you and I aren't teenagers anymore, and yet we write teenagers. So what's your process for making sure that you get it right?
Yeah, well, it's funny because when my kids were teenagers, I felt it was a lot easier, and now they're in their 20s. Oh my God. And it's funny because my daughter just finished reading I'm Good at Other Lies, and even she was impressed. She said, it's really impressive that you can, write something that still sounds like, you're pretty young and fit. I don't know. I think I'm kind of a teenager at heart. I'm really into pop culture. I'm listening to Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo as well as, other stuff. But I am a bit of a teen at heart. I like to keep up with pop culture stuff, all my social media stuff, all the TV shows and the books and the music. So, yeah, that helps, I guess. But I think, people are people. Everyone says, how can you keep up? But I'd like to think my books are mostly about characters and their journeys, and people haven't changed. There are good people, there are not so good people, most of us are mixes of both and do make good choices and not so good choices, and it's all about the people, really. I tell all my editing clients who write speculative fiction, it's still mostly about the character's journey. You don't have to talk world building every second. So
Yeah. For speculative fiction, the world building is usually the harder part. I kind of go in between realistic and world building.
Yes.
And it's exactly what you say, is that it's the characters that actually interest me. So you mentioned, Harry Potter. Were you a Harry Potter fan?
It was huge. My kids were huge into it. They were the perfect ages for it when it came out. So I remember reading it out loud to my daughter at bedtime. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I read those books out loud. They're so cute.
Yeah.
Also, the Hunger Games trilogy, I really enjoyed too. I thought the first book in the Hunger Games was quite amazing. I
Yeah.
still use it in my editing plans as a great example of, something that gets action and character
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Hunger Games, it's interesting because when I watched the movie, so Suzanne Collins was actually a screenwriter before she became an author.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And so she wrote the screenplay to at least the first one. I don't know if she wrote the screenplay to the other ones because I didn't check, but she did for the first one. And what I really liked about the screenplay was that because it wasn't in first person, she was able to go behind the scenes to show you what was happening with the game master and Haymitch, convincing the game master to change the game a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I kind of found in the book sometimes things didn't, it was a little bit of Dee's Machine or Dee's Machina where all of a sudden you've written your characters into a spot you can't get them out of, so then there's this voice from God literally in the book that says, we've changed the nature of the game, you can now pair up. And then when she's painted her characters into a corner again and can't get out of it, again the voice from God comes down and says, we've changed the rules of the game again, you're no longer paired. And in the book they kind of bugged me. But then when I watched the screenplay and I could see what was happening behind the scenes, I almost wish that had been in the book too.
Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see movie versions of books because sometimes people will say, well, movie is totally different, but movies are all external emotion that you have to write about, whereas books are internal emotion. And, yeah.
Interesting. I just watched the TV series that was made from Sally Rooney's Normal People. I don't know if you've read or seen it.
No, I haven't.
I loved the book, but there's a kind of coolness to the telling of it. I don't know how to describe it. Lots of interiority, and what I felt from the TV show most of all was that it warmed it up. It made the characters more real, more warm.
Oh, interesting.
It might be a stylistic thing. She, it's just the way of storytelling. She doesn't use quotation marks. It's all very kind of that cool, hip new way of writing. Excuse me.
Yeah. I've heard some books written like that where the dialogue is not in quotation marks and kind of or even no punctuation.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. I haven't read one like that yet, but
yeah, I haven't read one with punctuation.
So as an editor and as a writer, this would be my last question for you for the day. So this is the big one. But as a writer and as an editor, when you read books, are you able to turn off the writer and editor as you read?
No, I can't, and it's a curse. I'm telling you, a curse. I wish I could, but I'm always reading critically and thinking, this should have started here, or I'm not loving the subplot, or I'm thinking, oh man, this is so good, I'll never get to this level of competence. So I don't know, how do you feel about that as a writer?
Oh, same thing. If I read a book and it's just really extraordinary, like I read one a couple years ago for a class I was teaching called Music for Tigers, which I can't remember, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of the author, but it was published by Pajama Press.
Yeah, Michelle Katz-Rosenbaum.
Yes,
yeah.
That's her.
Amazing.
Beautifully written. Just the language in it is, it's hard to describe. Like, it just gives you this good feeling all over just reading the language. And I think to myself, oh my goodness, this is a really good writer. Like, what am I doing? And then other times, and I won't name any books, but other times you read a book and you think to yourself, yeah, I could do this better.
Yeah. We have to remember too, we all have different styles and different strengths.
Yeah, it's one of the things I try to teach my students actually, is to understand that just because you don't like a book doesn't mean that it's poorly written.
Right.
And so we very often talk about when they say, I didn't like it because it was poorly written. We often go into, how is it poorly written? Like, let's explore that. And then they realize that, actually it's not poorly written, it's just not my style.
It's just not your style, not everything's for everyone, and that's what I have to keep in mind now too as reviews come in.
Yeah. Reviews, those can be harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, if do you read your reviews? Like, are you able to not read? Because I've been told to never read my reviews, but I can't. I
never go on to Goodreads. I just am reading the ones my publicist is sending to me, which are the good ones. But I feel that's kind of like I'm like believing my good press, but not my bad. A little bit of that, but I think I'm too fragile to read all the bad stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how really up and down reviews can be too. Like sometimes people will praise you as if you are, you know, the greatest thing since J.K. Rowling, and then other times people will just completely trash your work, and it's heartbreaking. Like it's really I think I believe the bad press more than I'll believe the good press. There can be 10 reviews that are really positive, one review that's terrible. And
you'll believe the one bad one, and that's the one that'll stick in your mind. And it's terrible that at every stage of the writer's process, there's, when you go out on submission, I mean, it's just a field full of rejection, and that's just a strength people have to develop, and the ability to listen to that little voice in your head that says, no, this is worthwhile, and keep going.
Yeah. Well, I find the little voice in my head is people around me, friends and family.
That's great.
Which is really good. You know, they're the ones that are saying, you know, did you write today? Did you work on your book? You know, what's going on? And then those days, especially during the pandemic, because it was hard to write during the pandemic.
Yes, it was. Yeah. You did that support system. It was just electronically for sure. Yeah. I tried really hard to keep in touch with people that way.
Yeah. And not get Zoom fatigue.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're up at 11 o'clock, so I'm going to thank Bev Katz Rosenbaum for coming on to our Twitch stream and being our first guest author at Interview with the Storyteller.
Thank you so much. It was lovely talking to you, James. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's amazing. And I'm just going to say her books are available at bookstores everywhere. They're available at the library. So, you know, if you live in Richmond and you have a Richmond library card, or if you live in the Lower Mainland and you don't, anybody can have a Richmond library card. Come in and check out her books.
Oh, I should just add, I'm Good in Other Lives isn't officially out until September 25th.
Okay, so that one don't get until September 25th.
Don't go out today to buy that one. Wait until September 25th.
Otherwise, my coworkers will be asking me, why did you tell everybody to come get this book when it's not available yet for another month? Or in a few days, not a month. It's already mid-September. It's coming like 10 days.
Yeah, 10 days.
Yeah. Book launch, really quickly? Are you going to do an online?
Yes, virtual book launch September 29th, and you can go on my website, bevkatzrosenbaum.com, to find the link to that. And there will be another event actually on October 5th with Owl's Nest Book in Calgary, another virtual event. So
Owl's Nest is fantastic.
Yeah, you can find the links to both virtual events on my website, which is bevkatzrosenbaum.com.
Excellent. Okay, and so again, thank you very much, Bev, for coming on.
James. It was great talking to you.
And I'm just going to stop the stream here and say goodbye to everybody, and hope everybody enjoyed.